This video focuses on the military responsibilities of the president. So it's important to note that, according to the Constitution, the president serves as the commander in chief of the United States military. So this basically means that he's in charge of the military. However, it's actually Congress's responsibility to declare war. This requires a majority vote. So the president can ask, right, for a declaration of war, but it's actually Congress's responsibility to grant formally that declaration of war. And that again requires a majority vote of Congress, both houses, both the House and the Senate. So I know it's hard to see, but this chart basically shows you some of the major wars in American history. The red boxes, the War of 1812, the Mexican American War, the Spanish American War, World War I, and World War II, are the only wars in American history in which Congress formally declared war. They actually took a vote and they approved it. The others, the Civil War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, and then the War on Terror, were something else. They weren't actually formal declarations of war. So because both Korea and Vietnam in 1950s and the 1960s were undeclared military actions by which the president took the country into a warlike situation without getting a formal declaration of war from Congress. Congress passed something called the War Powers Act. So this was passed in 1973, and it was meant to be like a check on presidents that had been taking the country into military action without getting Congress's formal declaration of war. So the War Powers Act was intended to limit the president's ability to do military stuff without getting approval, like really long term military stuff. So the details of the War Powers Act are as follows. The president can basically still take military action. Sometimes it's just not it's not possible to like have Congress openly like debating on whether or not we should take military action against a foreign country. Like we lose the element of like surprise. So presidents can still take quick military action. But if something is going to last long, a president basically has to do the following. If the president takes any kind of military action that's going to last, he's got basically 48 hours to notify Congress and congressional leaders of what has happened, right? And then the president can keep authorizing the use of the military, but that can only last for a maximum of like about 60 days without formal congressional approval. So this gives the president some flexibility to still respond militarily to situations, but it prevents long-term wars from happening without Congress giving a formal declaration of war. So again, once something happens militarily, the president has 2 days basically to tell Congress what happens, and if he wants to keep doing it, he can only do it for an additional 60 days without getting that formal declaration of war from Congress. So you'll see that this kind of happened after, right, during both Iraq and Afghanistan. Um, but that was kind of Congress's fault that time. After September 11th, they basically gave the president at the time, George Bush, a blank check to prevent the country from future terrorist attacks. They basically almost gave up their declaration of war power, right? But in traditional circumstance, the president is limited to how long he can order military actions to go on without actually getting a formal declaration of war from Congress.